The academy buzzed with tension as news of another skirmish flashed across the giant holoscreens. Every cadet in the training hall looked up in silence, the symbol of the Galactic Alliance spinning beside images of destroyed colonies. Among them stood Jace Rylan, a young human cadet freshly admitted under a rare interspecies exchange program. His dark eyes were fixed on the report, but inside, he felt no fear. He had come to learn, but now he was being trained for war. Jace was one of only 3 humans chosen this year. The rest of the cadets were aliens, tall, scaled warriors from Krullen, feathered strategists from Tharia, and silent telepaths from the Zenti Hive. All different, all dangerous. And none of them trusted humans yet. Most called humans too emotional, too wild, or too unpredictable. Jace had learned to ignore the whispers, but he knew the truth. He wasn't just there to train. He was being tested by everyone around him on the first day of combat pairing. The commandant's voice echoed through the hall, silencing all side talk. Cadet Rylan, step forward. Jace obeyed. You will be mentored by Commander Jeria. Of the Teliari, a sudden murmur spread through the crowd. Jeria was known across the stars, a ruthless war hero, notoriously strict, and a Teliari, one of the most feared alien species in the academy. She stood 7 feet tall with armored skin, silver blue eyes, and a voice like cutting ice. Jace approached her carefully. Her gaze scanned him head to toe. A human, she said plainly. This will be a challenge. Jace didn't speak. He only saluted. Her eyes narrowed slightly. That silent gesture earned him the tiniest nod. Around them, the other cadets watched in silence, expecting him to fail. But Jeria turned and spoke firmly. You'll train under me. You'll eat only when you've earned it, sleep when I allow it, and survive if you're smart enough. She started walking without waiting for his reply. Training began that same night. While others slept, Jeria woke Jace early and dragged him to the empty sim deck. We'll test your instincts, she said. The chamber spun to life, creating a holographic battlefield. Without warning, drones attacked him. Jace dodged, rolled, and used every lesson from Earth's boot camps. But this was different. The drones were faster, smarter. Jeria stood behind, watching with cold silence. When he fell, she didn't help. She only said, again. By the 6th fall, blood dripped from his forehead, but he stood again without complaint. She noticed something that night. The human didn't complain. He didn't cry. He learned fast, adapted faster. And when she tested his reactions in real combat drills later that week, he did something no other cadet had dared. He disarmed her in a split-second counter-move. For a breath of time, the room fell silent. Even she looked surprised. But her expression turned quickly into a tight-lipped smile. Perhaps you're not entirely useless, she said. For Jeria, that was high praise. In the following days, strange signals began disrupting the academy's comms. The skies above. The training station grew tense with patrols. The instructors started walking with weapons visible. Rumors spread like wildfire. Something was happening beyond the outer rim. An unknown fleet had entered Alliance space. The leaders were denying it, but cadets overheard whispers. A rogue faction, unaffiliated species, maybe even synthetic invaders. Fear crept in where discipline once ruled. Then, during a night simulation, the power cut out. Every emergency. Light blinked red. Jeria was already up, armor half on, voice sharp. This is not a drill. Explosions echoed in the far section of the training bay. Smoke poured through ventilation. Screams followed. Jace had no weapon, only a stun stick, but he stood next to her anyway, ready. Jeria tossed him a plasma blade and gave him his first real order in battle. Protect the others, and stay alive. Then she vanished into the smoke like a shadow of war. Jace didn't run. He moved through corridors he barely knew, guiding frightened cadets away from breached zones. Alarms blared. Overhead, he led 3 wounded Krullans to shelter, helped a Therian bleeding from the wings. And when a hostile drone turned the corner, he didn't wait. He charged with blade in hand and disabled it with a strike he didn't know he could land. The war wasn't just unexpected, it had come for them all before their training ever finished. Asterisk smoke hung in the corridors like a thick curtain, stinging eyes and choking every breath. The Academy's pristine walls were now scorched and cracked. Emergency lights flickered above like dying stars. Jace held his plasma blade tightly, heart pounding. He had trained for battle, but this was real. And in this chaos, he wasn't just a cadet anymore. He was a soldier fighting to survive. He guided a group of younger recruits through the maintenance tunnels. A Zenti cadet clutched his arm, trembling, antennae twitching. Jace didn't stop. "Keep moving," he said calmly. Somewhere above, something exploded. Dust rained from the ceiling. Their path to the central hub was blocked by fallen steel and fire. But turning back meant death. So he pressed forward, one step at a time. Blade raised and eyes sharp. Jeria had vanished into the smoke earlier, like a ghost. No messages came through the broken comms. But Jace felt her presence in every command he gave, every movement he made. She had drilled him to act without hesitation, to survive without needing constant orders. Now he saw the wisdom in it. It wasn't cruelty, it was preparation. She hadn't abandoned him. She had trusted him to lead. He broke through a sealed bulkhead with an old pipe. Inside the next hall, an ambush waited. 3 mechanical invaders turned toward them with glowing eyes. Jace didn't think. He tackled the nearest one, driving the plasma blade through its chassis. Sparks flew. The second aimed a weapon, but the Zenti cadet screamed a warning just in time. Jace ducked and rolled, grabbing the weapon before it could fire again. He destroyed the third with 2 precise strikes. Panting from the effort, the recruits looked at him differently now, not like a human, not like an outsider, but like a leader. He told them to stay hidden in the secured infirmary. "Don't come out unless it's her or me," he said. Then he ran back into the burning academy alone. He had one goal in mind: find Commander Jeria before the invaders did. The war had come early, but it wasn't going to take her without a fight. Jeria was pinned near the simulation chamber. A collapsed support beam had crushed part of her armor. One leg bled dark purple fluid. But her hand still gripped a blaster, and her eyes were sharp. She didn't call for help. She didn't beg. She just kept firing at anything that moved. Jace spotted her from a balcony and jumped without thinking, landing beside her with a grunt. "You again," she said with a smirk. "You're late." He smiled through the blood on his face. Together, they held the line. Jace covered her flank as she reloaded. The enemy was fast and silent, but not smart. Jeria barked tactics while Jace executed them with precision. They moved as one. She threw a flash grenade. He rushed in and finished the day's machines. The floor was slick with oil and sparks. Still, they stood their ground, side by side. For the first time, Jeria called him by name. "Rylan, don't die on me today." He simply nodded and answered, never planned to. Her eyes flicked toward him with approval. A sudden pulse knocked them both off their feet. A wave of blue energy slammed through the academy, shorting lights and freezing motion. Everything fell quiet for a moment. Then came the loudest sound yet, a war horn. Deep, ancient, and terrifying. Jeria's face turned grim. "That's not just invaders," she said. "That's a declaration." She stood with difficulty, gripping Jace's shoulder for support. The academy isn't just under attack. It's being claimed by an enemy faction we never knew existed. He clenched his fists as the meaning hit him like a hammer. The skies above turned black as hostile cruisers began descending through the clouds. The academy's upper shield finally collapsed. Fire rained down from the heavens. Distant cities flickered in the distance as if burning too. This wasn't just about cadets or training anymore. This was war on a planetary scale. Jace stared up, then back at Jeria. "What now?" he asked. She didn't hesitate. "Now we stop being students, we become warriors. Starting now we fight as equals." He didn't blink. "Yes, Commander." The sky above them lit up with fire as they ran toward the front line together. The Academy's defense grid sparked uselessly against the enemy cruisers above. The entire upper atmosphere was under siege, and the once proud training halls now served as cover for desperate cadets. Jace moved swiftly beside Jeria through broken halls, making quick turns and checking corners. They had no time to mourn the dead or wonder what happened. All they could do was survive and fight forward. Jace spotted a group of trapped recruits hiding under debris. Without thinking, he dropped his blade and lifted a heavy beam off them. His arms shook from the weight, but he didn't let go. Jeria kept watch while he freed them, then gave instructions to head for the infirmary bunker. One of the recruits looked back and saluted. Jace returned it silently. The human who was once doubted now gave orders, others followed. Their path to the communications tower was dangerous. If they could restore the long-range beacon, the Alliance could send help, but enemy scouts now filled every corridor. Jace and Jeria moved as one, taking down drones with silent precision. When alarms triggered, they took cover and waited. Every move counted. Every second was measured. Jace didn't ask questions anymore. He anticipated. He understood. And Jeria noticed everything he didn't say. Halfway up the tower, they were cornered by 4 armored sentinels. Jeria gave Jace a quick glance, then nodded. That was enough. He rushed forward, sliding beneath one of the machines and slicing its joints. It fell with a thud. Jeria leapt from above and landed with a crushing blow on another. The remaining 2 fired rapidly, forcing them into cover. Jace crawled along the edge, then threw a stun mine into their ranks. It exploded in a flash of light and sparks. When it cleared, only silence remained. Inside the control room, the beacon's interface was cracked and pulsing. Jeria examined it while Jace stood guard. "We need to reroute power from the emergency core," she said. Jace pulled open a panel and began rewiring, his hands moving fast. He had studied human systems, but now he had to think like an alien engineer. With her voice guiding him, the system came to life. The beacon flared blue, sending its call across the stars. Jeria looked at him and said simply, "Good work." Suddenly, the floor beneath them rumbled. From the far end of the control room, a shadow emerged. It was larger than any drone they had faced. A combat-class war drone, reinforced and glowing with red circuitry. Jeria stepped forward, raising her blaster. Jace stopped her. "I'll distract it. You shoot when I say." She hesitated only for a breath, then nodded. Jace sprinted to the left, drawing the machine's fire. Sparks flew as shots missed by inches. He jumped, rolled, and threw his blade into its optics. "Now!" he shouted. Jeria fired 2 plasma bursts straight into the exposed core. The drone exploded in a controlled blast. Jace flew back and hit the wall hard. His ears rang. When his vision cleared, he saw Jeria pulling him up. Her armored hand gripped his shoulder. "Tight. You keep getting in front of fire," she said. "Someone has to," he replied. She looked at him for a long moment, then gave a rare smile. "You remind me of my brother. He died on his first deployment. Too brave, too fast. But you might actually survive." Jace didn't smile. He simply nodded. They made their way to the lower levels again. With the beacon active, the enemy had changed their strategy. Instead of hunting, they were retreating. Jeria didn't like it. "They're not losing," she said. "They're regrouping." That meant more waves would come. Worse waves. But for now, They had a chance to regroup too. They reached the barracks, where injured cadets and surviving instructors had formed a makeshift command post. All eyes turned to them. Jeria spoke, but this time she gestured to Jace to stand. Beside her, "This cadet fought like a warrior," she said. "He led without fear, fought with skill, earned my respect." The room stayed quiet. Then one by one, the alien cadets nodded. Some saluted. Some placed weapons on the table, offering support. Jace felt the shift. He wasn't just tolerated anymore, he was part of them. A new symbol was painted above the barracks door, a human hand and a Teliari claw crossed together. A mark of unity in chaos. As night fell on the burning skies, Jace sat outside the barracks and looked at the stars. Some were moving now, rescue ships, maybe reinforcements. He didn't know if tomorrow would bring peace or more battle. But for the first time since arriving, he felt ready for either. Jeria stood beside him silently, arms crossed and eyes sharp. "Rest while you can, Cadet Raylan," she said. "The real war is only beginning." And he believed her. The night brought little silence, even when the enemy had pulled back. Fires still burned in distant sectors, and the sound of groaning metal echoed through the Academy's damaged halls. Inside the barracks, cadets patched wounds, reloaded weapons, and whispered updates. Jace sat near a table with Jeria, going over a rough map drawn on a cracked datapad. The enemy had retreated, but they left behind a puzzle. Their movement didn't match any known military strategy. They knew where to strike, Jeria said, tapping at key points. Their attacks were too precise, not random, not experimental. Jace studied the marks. They avoided the engine core. They avoided the life systems. They didn't come to destroy the Academy, he said. Jeria looked at him and finished the thought. They came to test us. That realization sat like a stone in the room. Everyone listened more closely now. A new day began with another unexpected order. Jeria was summoned to the central command above the Academy. Jace was told to accompany her. The two climbed a shattered stairwell to reach the observatory deck. What remained of the command council stood behind a cracked holotable. A new face appeared among them, Admiral Trellin of the Outer Ring Defense. His voice was stern, and his expression unreadable. "Commander Jeria." "Cadet Rylan, we need to talk about what happened here." The Admiral's team had reviewed security footage, intercepted comms and even enemy signals. Something chilling stood out. During the battle, one of the enemy units had spoken not to token, intimidate, but to warn. It had said one clear phrase in Galactic Common: "The human must not survive." The room fell silent as the message played. Jeria turned to Jace. He looked equally confused. But deep inside, he already feared what it meant. "They were hunting me," Jace said quietly. "Not just the Academy," Trellin confirmed it. "We believe your species holds something the enemy fears. You weren't just paired with Jeria by chance. That decision came from higher up. You were part of a larger plan to test human adaptability. With elite command structure." Jace leaned forward, fists clenched. "So I was bait." Jeria placed a firm hand on his arm, stopping his anger from boiling over. Jeria's voice cut through the tension. "He was no bait. He led. He protected. He fought as my equal." Her tone silenced everyone. "If they came for him, they failed, and if they return, they'll face both of us." The council didn't object. Instead, Trellin offered something unexpected. "We want you two to lead a joint task team. Alien and human cadets, trained together. Your example has already proven what cooperation can achieve." Jeria didn't speak. She turned to Jace, waiting for his answer. Jace stood tall, despite the weight on his shoulders. He looked around the room, then at the stars visible through the shattered dome. "I didn't come to be a hero, I came to learn. But if my existence puts others in danger, I won't run, I accept." His voice was steady. Jaria nodded once, her approval silent but strong. A new mission had begun, but it would test them like never before. Their task team was formed within hours. Krellin blade dancers, Therian tacticians, 2 Zenti mindseers, and a single human Jace Rylan. Jaria trained them personally, harder than ever before. Jace led field exercises, simulations, and emergency drills. No one questioned his orders anymore. They respected his courage. And more importantly, they followed because he fought beside them, not above them. One night, after a grueling training session, Jace sat alone outside the barracks. Jaria joined him in silence. They looked up at the stars, wondering how far the enemy had already spread. "Why do you fight so hard?" she asked him. Jace thought for a moment. "Because I've seen what happens when we wait too long to fight back," she nodded slowly. "Then I'll make sure you're never fighting alone again." He didn't reply. He didn't need to. In a distant sector, a silent transmission reached a hidden warship. A synthetic voice spoke one name, Rylan. The commander of the vessel turned with cold, artificial eyes. "He has grown stronger," it said. "Then we proceed to Phase 2. Somewhere deep in space, the next stage of the enemy's plan had begun. And it would strike harder than before." The academy halls were rebuilt slowly. Engineers patched broken walls, replaced shattered lights, and reinforced doors with new plating. Yet even as the metal was repaired, the fear in people's hearts lingered. Jace moved through the corridors, not as a lost cadet, but as a rising symbol of resilience. Whispers followed him now, not of doubt, but of respect. He didn't want fame, but he understood its weight. Jaria stood at the training yard, arms folded, eyes watching their new task team train. The squad moved as one, blending species, skill, and instinct. Jace issued commands with calm precision. The Krellin followed without hesitation. The Therians adapted tactics on the fly. The Zenti read enemy simulations before they even formed. It wasn't perfect, but it was real progress. Jaria allowed herself a brief smile before her face hardened again. Inside the command center, Admiral Trellin shared news that twisted the mood. There was no signal tracking the enemy ship, no warp trace, no energy trails. He pointed to a hollow sector in space. "We believe the enemy is not just advancing. They're watching, listening. Possibly already among us." The words cut like a knife. A silence fell over the room. Jace leaned in, voice steady. "You mean there's a spy here?" Trellin didn't answer. He didn't have to. Security across the academy tightened instantly. Biometric scans were repeated. Patrols tripled. Data logs were reviewed, yet nothing surfaced. The enemy had covered their tracks well. Jaria met with Jace in private, her tone more serious than ever. "If the enemy is inside, they'll try to divide us. Break the trust we've built." Jace nodded, understanding the weight of her warning. Every face could now be a mask, every voice a lie. But they wouldn't flinch. That night, during a late systems check, Jace noticed an irregularity in the simulation server logs. A recent file had been accessed and rerouted through an outdated relay station. He brought it to Jaria. "This station was supposed to be shut down," he said. She scanned the data and found a hidden layer, an encrypted message that had been sent off-world during the last attack. "It was never just an ambush," she said. "It was a data theft." Her claws clenched against the console. They traced the transmission path back to a technician named Voro, a Zentari hybrid with limited clearance. When approached, he panicked and fled into the engineering tunnels. Jace and Jaria gave chase. Without hesitation. The tunnels were dark, narrow, and full of echoing sounds. Jace moved ahead while Jaria covered the rear. Voro was fast but not trained. Eventually they cornered him near the coolant pumps, breathing hard and trembling. "I had no choice," he gasped. "They found my family." They made me send them. The codes. Jace didn't lower his weapon. You could have told someone. We would have helped. Voro shook his head. They promised to release them if I cooperated. But I think they lied. Jeria stepped forward. They always lie. Where are they holding your family? Voro looked down in shame. A freighter in orbit. No registration. They move every 2 hours. She didn't wait. Orders were already forming in her mind. Jace requested permission to lead a rescue strike. Trellin was hesitant. If it's a trap, you won't make it back, Jace replied calmly. Then we'll spring it carefully. Jeria volunteered as second, and the rest of the task team supported them without hesitation. The mission was approved. Within the hour, a stealth cruiser left the Academy hangar under darkness, carrying them toward a trap that might be real, or might be worse than they imagined. The freighter appeared empty at first, floating silently in the black void. But heat signatures betrayed movement inside. Jace and Jeria entered through a maintenance hatch, moving without a sound. Inside, dim lights revealed empty cages, broken restraints, and strange devices. They followed the signs to a control room, where an alien being waited. Its skin was dull gray, with eyes like cold steel. It turned slowly and spoke in flawless Galactic common. You're too late. An explosion rocked the ship as hidden charges blew through the lower decks. Jeria pushed Jace behind a shield panel as fire erupted through the vents. The alien vanished in the chaos. Sirens blared. Smoke filled the hallways. The mission was a setup. But it also confirmed the enemy's worst weapon wasn't brute force. It was manipulation. Jace grabbed Jeria and pulled her toward the escape pod as the freighter shook violently around them. The escape pod spun wildly as it broke free from the exploding freighter. Jace held onto the side rail, pulling Jeria up beside him. Alarms screamed inside the cramped chamber. Smoke leaked from the control panel. The stabilizers were barely holding, and gravity twisted in waves. But the moment they cleared the blast radius, the stars returned to view through the cracked viewport. They had survived the trap, but barely, Jace panted, sweat running down his face. Jeria pressed a hand against her side, blood seeping from between her armor plates. You're hit, he said. Not deep, she replied. We need to focus. They rerouted the emergency beacon to signal the Academy. Help wouldn't come fast, but it was coming. In the silence that followed, both of them sat down against the curved wall, breathing in smoke and metal. They had failed to rescue the family. The cages were empty. The enemy had moved them long before the strike team arrived. Worse, the trap revealed that the enemy's agents had planned everything with precise timing. Jeria frowned. We need to stop chasing shadows. We hit back now. Jace nodded, his jaw tight. No more reacting. We strike first. Their eyes met, and without speaking, they both agreed to carry the war to the enemy's gate. Back at the Academy, they were treated as heroes, but both felt the weight of loss. Voro's family remained missing. The Zentari hybrid sat in silence, ashamed, yet no longer hiding. Jace approached him. We'll find them, he said. They used you, but it's not over. Voro bowed his head, voice breaking. Just bring them home. It was a promise Jace would not break. Jeria briefed Admiral Trellin with sharp precision. We need infiltration access to enemy supply lines. They're not machines. Someone is feeding them fuel, data, and positions. Trellin approved limited. Clearance for deep recon. You'll have 3 jumps. After that, you're alone. Jace didn't hesitate. We've been alone before. The Admiral placed a hand on his shoulder, a rare gesture of trust from a hardened leader. The mission was silent and swift. Their cruiser darted between forgotten sectors, avoiding detection. Old beacons flickered with outdated codes. They followed. A hidden signal trail that led to a derelict mining station floating over a gas giant. Power signatures showed recent activity, but no comms. Jeria adjusted her visor. Something's down there. Jace tightened his gloves and loaded his sidearm. Let's find out what. Inside the station, the air was cold and stale. The halls were lined with ancient cargo crates. Dust floated. Like mist, but behind the stillness, motion sensors picked up movement. Not drones, not soldiers, civilians, hundreds of them. Mostly alien families, some Krullan, some Therian, some unregistered. They're prisoners, Jace whispered. Hidden. Here to keep them silent. Jeria stepped forward and examined one of the holding cells. And bartered for loyalty. A tall figure emerged from the shadows, not armored, but calm. I warned them someone like you would come, he said. His voice was smooth, almost kind. Jace raised his weapon. Who are you? The figure smiled. A supplier. A whisper in the ear of every desperate soldier. I feed war. I profit from fear. Jeria moved in front of Jace. You're not walking away from this. The man tilted his head. Neither are you if you fire. The station's walls suddenly hissed. Gas filled the hallway. Alarms erupted. It was a trap again, but this time they had backup. The task team, waiting nearby, received the emergency ping. Within minutes, a breach team entered the station, clearing corridors and sealing exits. Jace and Jeria pushed through the fog, fighting past guards disguised as miners. It was chaos, but it was their kind of chaos. They reached the central control node where the figure tried to escape via private shuttle. Jace shot the engine with a pulse bolt, disabling it. Jeria tackled him to the ground and cuffed his hands. No more whispers, she said. He looked up and sneered. Others will replace me. She leaned close and replied coldly. Then we'll silence them too. Around them, the lights of the station turned green as every prison door unlocked. At once, the rescued families were taken back to the academy for medical treatment and debriefing. For the first time in weeks, the halls felt alive again. Children's voices echoed softly. Elders whispered prayers in alien tongues. And soldiers walked with a little more pride. Jace stood at the hangar entrance, watching the docking crews unload the last group. One of the Therian children ran up and hugged his leg without a word. Jeria stood nearby, silent as always, but her eyes were softer. This was the first real blow to the enemy's plan, she said. Jace nodded. We struck their supply lines, freed their leverage. Now they'll be desperate. She looked toward the sky. Desperate enemies are dangerous. He knew she was right. The final battle wasn't far off. And they were running out of time. Trellin met them in the command chamber. His face was grim, and a red warning blazed across the holomap. A fleet has moved into position near Sector 18. It matches the energy signature of the ship that attacked us during the Academy siege. The lights dimmed as projections showed the enemy formation. They're gathering for something massive. Jeria stepped forward and pointed. They'll strike this planet next. Her words were a quiet alarm no one dared to ignore. Emergency protocols were activated across the sector. The Academy became a command center. Old cadets were recalled. Reserve fleets summoned. Every available warrior, human and alien, was called to arms. The task team stood at the center of it all. Jace felt the pressure build, but he showed none of it. He looked at the map and spoke calmly. We can't just defend. We need to break their front before they strike. Trellin raised a brow. You have a plan? Jace only nodded. They proposed a counterattack with 3 strike wings. One would hit the enemy's rear to disrupt logistics. Another would target their long-range cannons. The final group, led by Jace and Jeria, would head straight into the core command ship. It's suicide, one officer said. No, Jeria replied. It's the only move they won't expect. The room went silent. Trellin tapped the table once, then prepare to launch. You leave in 4 hours. No one argued after that. In the locker room, Jace suited up with quiet focus. Jeria checked. Her armor beside him. Do you feel fear? She asked. He tightened his gauntlets. Yes, but I'm used to fighting with it now. She nodded approvingly. That means you'll survive. For a brief moment, they just stood there. No words, no orders, just two soldiers staring down the unknown. Then the alarm sounded, and it was time to go. Their strike cruiser emerged from hyperspace directly into chaos. Lasers lit the void. Massive. Enemy frigates loomed ahead. Drones swarmed like angry wasps. But the Academy fleet followed behind, holding the line. Jace gripped the controls and plunged forward. Get us into the heart, he shouted. Jeria guided the team with sharp commands. They cut through the chaos like a blade through smoke. They reached the enemy command vessel and docked with a brutal impact. The hatch blew open, and the team charged in. The halls inside were cold, dark, and strangely quiet. They're hiding something, Jeria muttered. Jace stayed close, every step echoed. They moved deeper until they reached the central chamber. Inside stood a single figure, the same gray-skinned one who escaped before. You've come far, he said, but this ends here. Jace raised his weapon without hesitation. A shield activated around the figure. Turrets dropped from the ceiling. The room became a death trap. But this time, they were ready. Jace rolled into cover while Jeria leaped across the chamber, slicing through a turret. The team spread out, disabling defenses one by one. The enemy leader laughed from inside the shield. You don't understand what you've started. Jace growled. I don't care. I'm here to end it. He fired a charged blast into the core relay, breaking the shield in a single flash of energy. Jeria struck the enemy down with a clean blow. The body fell, but no blood spilled. It was mechanical, a decoy. Too late, they realized the real command signal was routed remotely. The ship began to shake. A core meltdown had started. Jace opened comms. Mission complete. Evacuate now. Jeria grabbed him as they sprinted back to the dock. They had hurt the enemy, yes, but they also triggered something far worse. Jace. And Jeria sprinted through the burning corridor as the enemy command ship groaned around them. Explosions rattled the walls. Red lights spun wildly. The engine core had been set to overload. Their strike team had already evacuated, but Jace and Jeria stayed behind too long. The exit hatch was closing. Their cruiser was already detaching. From the outer hull, they had less than 1 minute to escape. Jeria tossed her plasma blade into the failing lock system. Sparks flew. The door jammed open, just enough for them to slide through. They jumped across a half-collapsed walkway, landing on a cargo rail. Jace pulled a magnetic cable from his belt and fired it toward the retreating ship. The hook latched on. Without speaking, he grabbed Jeria, and they swung out into the void as the command vessel began to detonate from within. A wave of fire burst behind them as they flew through open space. The magnetic cable snapped tight, jerking them toward the cruiser's loading ramp. The docking crew scrambled to pull them in. Just as the enemy ship exploded into fragments, the ramp sealed shut, shielding them from the blast. Both lay on the deck, coughing, their suits scorched, but alive. The crew around them cheered as the cruiser jumped into hyperspace. Back at the Academy, the mood was different this time. There was no chaos, no rushing repairs, only relief. The command vessel had been destroyed, the enemy fleet scattered. And most importantly, no further signals from their network had been detected. It was over, for now at least. Jace stood quietly outside the infirmary, looking up at the Academy's shining tower that once lay in ruin. Jeria walked beside him, her wounds freshly bandaged. You've changed, she said without expression. So have you, he replied. She nodded once. I no longer see you as a student. Jace didn't respond with pride. He simply stared out at the stars. I never saw myself as one after. That first night, Jeria folded her arms. Then you were a warrior from the beginning. It only took war to show it. Inside the Academy's central hall, the cadets gathered for a final announcement. Admiral Trellin stepped forward with a formal tone. By order of the Alliance High Command, Jace Rylan is hereby promoted to Officer of the United Forces. Murmurs filled the room. Jace stood from his seat and walked to the front. The Admiral placed the insignia on his shoulder with respect. And Commander Jeria is granted full strategic command over a joint species division. Applause echoed through the dome, but Jace did not celebrate. He approached the stage, turned to the cadets, and raised his voice. I was not chosen because I was the best. I was chosen because I was different. They thought that was a weakness, but it became our strength. You were told to follow orders. I say learn who you follow and why. Question fear. Trust loyalty and fight not for pride, but for the one beside you. Then he stepped down, leaving silence behind him. Later that night, he returned to the old training yard. The stars above were peaceful. He walked through the dust, past empty dummies and broken blades. This was where it all began. Where he had first faced her. Where fear became courage. Where doubt turned to resolve. Jeria appeared quietly beside him. You could leave now, she said. Earth would honor you. You could have peace. Jace looked at her with a calm gaze. Peace means nothing if others don't have it. They stood in silence for a while. Then she handed him a new weapon, one forged with Tuliari steel and human alloy. Your design, she said, built from both worlds. He held it with care. It was heavier than it looked, strong, balanced. It's not just a blade, he said. It's a symbol. She nodded. Then carry it well. They did not shake hands. They only stood shoulder to shoulder, looking at the horizon of stars that stretched endlessly beyond them. The war was not over. Somewhere in the dark, new threats would rise. But they would not rise unnoticed. Not anymore. A human cadet and an alien commander had revealed what unity looked like. Not through speeches, not through flags, but through survival. Through respect. Through fire. And together, they stood ready to face whatever galaxy dared to test them next.